All right, welcome. This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show, coming to you live from flintalkradio.com. Where are my headphones? I knew I felt like I was naked in here. John, what's going on? You just slapped me.
I forgot to tell you to put them on there.
Yeah.
I'm not doing my role. Can you hear me?
There, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Yeah, my role of producer is supposed to make sure you got all that stuff done.
I felt funny. I didn't know. I was like, what's missing? I can't.
You know, it gets cold in all the earmuffs, you know.
Right. There's definitely a cold day here in Flint. We're back to chilly temperatures in the 20s today. So everybody out there, be careful, stay warm, all that good stuff. I got some news for you from the medical marijuana community around the state and the nation. Just wanted to share with you today. Also got some updates from the Genesee County Compassion Club. I know that we've got our soup kitchen coming up here next month, February 7th, which is the first Friday in the month. We'll be serving down at the North End Soup Kitchen once again. So if you could join us on that Friday, we definitely appreciate your help. We start out at 2 o'clock at the club, and then we'll carpool on over there to serve food, and we need about 10 to 12 volunteers. So if you could help out, we greatly appreciate that. Also, I think that's about it for that. Check my notes. Yep, yeah, we're good. So join us at the Soup Kitchen if you can. I think we've got some other fun stuff coming up at the club. I know we're still working on the Holistic Center. Hopefully have that opening up here relatively soon. And I'm looking forward to that, man. I got some of the previews of our products. Definitely excited about those. And, speaking of holistic things, I was reading an article earlier this week, and it was talking about hemp milk. And this is kind of cool stuff. If you've not had a chance to check it out, you can find it at most grocery stores nowadays. They'll have it in the organic section or the healthy foods section of your local store. And places like Kroger, Meijer's even have it now. But, there's a lot of different varieties out there. You definitely want to experiment with them. And but something I can tell you that's interesting about hemp milk, there was, pull this up here, comparing hemp milk and, your regular dairy milk or cow milk, there really isn't much of a comparison there. I mean, not that regular milk isn't good for you, it certainly is. But when it comes to comparing it to hemp milk wins hands down. It is a lot healthier for you. And you'll notice that it's a little bit more pricey at the grocery store, so you might not be able to use quite as much as compared to regular cow milk. But it is a nice alternative. You definitely want to experiment with different types of varieties and brands out there because they have quite the different palates, if you will. The flavors can vary quite a bit. Some of them are flavored and others will just be plain. But some of them I've tried not so hot, to be honest with you. It kind of tasted like dirt, quite frankly. Maybe dirt would be an improvement. I don't know. Some of the other ones were pretty tasty, though. I found a little trick that I enjoy myself. Just take a tablespoon of maple syrup, mix it in there with it, and it comes out tasting like some kind of a dessert. I mean, it actually tasted really good, and then I really enjoyed it. But just a dollop of maple syrup in your hemp milk and makes it tasty. I guess you'd go with that's the elf fix right there. Just put some maple syrup on it.
Could milk be made out of cannabis, like full-fledged cannabis?
You would end up with more of like a juiced product,
okay.
I think so, than milk. Hemp milk itself is made from hemp seeds. They crush them down, basically, or extract juice out of the hemp seeds, and then they mix it with water. So it's a pretty simple process. But consequently, what comes out of that is a pretty awesome whole food. It contains a lot of the proteins that are normally kind of hard to get. Some of the amino acids that are found in hemp milk are particularly hard to find in other foods, which it has a decent amount of protein in it, a little bit higher amount in ratio versus dairy. So it's a good source of protein. It also contains a lot of the fatty acids that can be difficult to find if you're not, if you don't have a good fish diet or you're not taking your vitamins. But it does have a lot of the fatty acids in it, such as like omega-3, omega-6, and it also has a slew of vitamins like A, E, B12, and folic acid. It has magnesium, potassium, iron, so just to mention a few. Some of the benefits from drinking hemp milk: you can have an increased immune system, have some clear, healthy skin, stronger nails, good for your heart, and increased mental capacity. Who would have known?
I have two questions for you, though.
Yeah.
The plants for use for like medical marijuana, do they have that high of the seed yield as like say compared to hemp plants? Another thing is I just recently started to making my dog's food up. Cooking up a bunch of foods into slow cooker, and then adding, and it's got fish oils and stuff in it. I was just hearing that. I was just wondering if I could grind up hemp seed and then toss that in there, that mix too. And since you're going for the omega-3 oils and stuff like that for dogs,
certainly could.
Yeah.
There's nothing that is going to upset your canine friend there.
Right.
It's not known to really be that sort of an allergen type of a property. You might want to consult with your veterinarian first, but I think that you'd be relatively pretty safe just mixing it in with your pet's food. I know that hemp seed, which has been sterilized, is a real common bird food. Now, you probably would sterilize just simply means that you're not going to be able to go home and germinate those seeds. But all in all, I think it's pretty relatively healthy for any mammal to ingest.
But but like the hemp yield, I mean the seed. There's a lot of hemp seeds. Is that the same
talking
way?
about that, John.
Yeah.
This is coming from the hemp plant, which is like a sister to the medical marijuana plant that we see. And it is grown for industrial purposes. It is containing a lot of seeds. And in comparison to medical marijuana, typically that's produced without any seeds.
Yeah, because you don't want seed because they become a problem when it's being burned.
It's not
whatever.
used for, in that sense of the word, for medicinal purposes. I
Right.
think you could probably use it for preventative medicine, like we're talking about here, with having different benefits when it's being ingested. But as comparison to medical marijuana, no, it's not really produced in the same fashion in that regard. Like you've probably heard of the term sensimilia, which is simply the marijuana flower being produced without any seeds contained inside of it. And what they're doing is the growers are growing these plants out and not allowing them to become germinated with male pollen. And so the flower itself just simply continues to produce flower material only, or bud as it's referred to.
Back in the 70s, I remember that was a highly sought after commodity.
Yeah,
out here
back in the old days.
Yeah,
when
the Sensi, you always heard about that. And I guess that's not, in comparison to what we got now, the medical marijuana and the marijuana strains. It's pathetic compared to that. I mean, for the strength and all that.
Sure. I mean, it's been hybridized, and a lot of amazing things that growers have been able to do to it to improve the results from the plant. But definitely over time, people have gotten down the process. They've been able to share that information with others. So now it's quite a common thing that you will not find any seeds in your medical marijuana flowers. And sometimes you will. I mean, you'll find genetics that have sort of gone on their own way and produced maybe premature seeds, or maybe they were cross-pollinated with a male flower that didn't get caught quite in time. Sometimes you'll have plants that will be hermaphroditic, where it'll have both sexes. This is actually kind of a common thing when it comes to people using feminized seeds, as the seed strains are not quite as stable as a regularly formed seed. And so when the plant gets stressed out, or sometimes just due to its own genetic makeup, it'll actually produce both male pollen sacs and female buds. And of course, those male pollen sacs can pollinate anything else that's in the room or in the area that is in the vicinity of that pollen. Once it comes in contact with those female pistils, well, that plant is triggered now, it's fertilized, and it could actually end up producing seed, which for medical marijuana is not desirable. Most people are not going to want that in their product.
No, okay. I'm really drawing a blank here. I'm not that great at botany, but say the pollen from a male, you actually fertilize the female plants. Now, is a lot of the genetic material from the father plant, does that like passed on to that way, or is it just sort of to complete the process?
Oh, it certainly
of
is.
fertilization?
Certainly is. Now, the flower itself that's going to be growing and continue to grow, which is now fertilized, that's not going to change its genetic makeup. I mean, whatever type of strain it was when it started, it still is now. The difference is now it has seeds inside of it that are crossed between that plant, the female one, and the male plant where the pollen came from.
So that's how you would get a hybrid.
That is exactly how you'd get a hybrid.
So I mean, but basically, what kind of deal? Say somebody wants to bring in two different types of qualities. They want to get something from the indica and then one from the sativa. So they basically maybe will a male plant of one of the other types be in the presence of a female of the other, and that's where they get the hybrids.
Yeah,
right?
and this is where selection comes into play. A lot of breeders out there will really take their time in developing male plants specifically, just to find out what different types of characteristics that male plant will have to use as sort of a father on its female plants in the garden. And a lot of times, you'll have a particularly well-doing strain, one that's known for having certain characteristics, and sometimes people will stress that plant out so that it will produce seed, and then they can take seed from that and breed it back to itself. But and get into the breeding stages, that's where a lot of sort of selection has to be made, and it can be very difficult for home growers to have to try to complete this process. That's why a lot of people really don't get into that much, is because there's so many variables in play. And that is the general idea, is like, okay, if I take a particular strain, let's say I've got a strong sativa here, it's a female plant, and then I have an indica plant that I also enjoy. The difficulty is that you have to get a male of one of those, and you may not have a male to start with. So you have to try to figure out a way to get a male, and there's different methods that can be used in the garden to have a plant produce its own seed without it being pollinated per se. Once that process is completed, though, you'd have to take that seed, sprout it, hopefully get a male of good selection from that strain, and then have it pollinate so that it can actually, or produce pollen so that it can actually pollinate back to whatever female you've decided to select growing with. And then from there, then they'll take seeds from that generation and grow them out and try to figure out which is the best one. So there's a lot of selection involved, a lot of variables, and if you've spent any time in the garden at all, you'll know that oftentimes you may have 10 seeds sitting there and none of them come up the same. So there can be a lot of variance in the stability of these strains. So obviously at the end of the day, when you're all done, then taking it back, having it tested either by your patients or by some sort of scientific testing to get results and trying to find out, did your plan work out? Did you really come up with what it is you're looking for? And that's why seed companies that are well renowned take thousands of plants to try to select down to just one that will be stable, that's going to have the same production results, for its customers out there that are buying those seeds as it is producing in their own garden there. And it can take a lot of different trial and error attempts in order to be able to create exactly what it is that they're trying to look for.
Okay, now a plant's growing, and when plant's developing, is it genetically going to be a male or female, or is it environmental stressors? That maybe, I know crocodilians, crocodiles, alligators, the eggs they lay, actually the sex of them is determined by the surrounding temperature where they're incubating at, largely. So is that similar to the plants, or what?
I can't really say for sure as far as is environment going to dictate whether that seed is going to be a male or female. I'd have to say from experience, no. That you're, from a regularly sexed plant, when it's been fertilized by non-feminized types of methods, typically you're going to have normally I would say it's about a 50-50 chance it's going to be male or female. Certain strains and certain batches of seeds will definitely lean, more dominant male or more dominant female just on their own natural ability, but this is really more of a matter of chance. One that hasn't really been figured out yet too well. In fact, that's why now there's quite a large market for feminized seeds, where they have taken time to back cross different types of breeding methods so that these seeds will come out 90 to 95% of the time in a feminized manner. And a lot of folks are really excited about this because they take a lot of risk and time, especially when you have limited amounts of plants that you can grow. Waiting 2 to 3 months for a plant to be able to be mature enough to actually find out if it's male or female can be a grueling process for patients and caregivers, because here you go, you've got a limit of 12 plants that you're allowed to work with, and if 4 of those come up as male and you're going to have to throw them away, obviously it's going to seriously hamper the amount of medicine that you'll have to work with when the plants are finally harvested. So this is definitely a concern, and that's why feminized seeds have become so popular as of late, is because if we can narrow down that percentage of plants that will come out male when we're trying out new genetics and new seeds, obviously it's going to be to the patient's benefit and making sure that they're going to have enough medicine at the end of the day when that crop is finally finished. Some people are naysayers of this because of the fact that those feminized seeds do have a greater propensity to turn hermaphroditic. But I think under normal conditions and from good sites or good breeding selection, this can typically be eliminated. I've tried both, and I haven't had a problem as long as the garden has stayed stable and the proper care has been given to the plants and not having them turn hermaphroditic. But I have had some batches that were, and when that happens, it can be a real damage to the garden, because now all the other plants that you have surrounding that area that are in the flowering process are susceptible to having that pollen come in contact with them. And if you've got a plant that you think, here, it looks great, there's a big bud growing on there, it looks like it should, but then all of a sudden underneath there's these male pollen sacs that have now opened and they're spilling out this gold dust that basically goes everywhere. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to spread dust, if you can imagine. And these particles, these pollen particles, are basically about the size of dust, and they spread very easily. So if they come in contact with those other plants that are flowering in that vicinity, well, then those plants are now going to produce seeds as well. And
well, like the talk recently about Monsanto basically want to monopolize the seed source, becoming a monopolization
Sure.
on the seed source. With medical marijuana, do you see some evil corporation possibly trying to do that as well? Or?
Actually, Monsanto has their digs into marijuana seed propagation, just like they do on every other type of seed propagation. So there is a realistic probability that somewhere down the line there could be patents or copyrights being put in force to try to limit people's ability to breed their own strains or to buy seeds from some type of distributor. This hasn't happened yet, but in fact, I read an article not that long ago that was saying that the majority of the genetics that were out there today could be traced back to just a few different types of strains of marijuana. And the question in that article was, well, what if a company like Monsanto had the copyright to these particular types of genetics and then were to say, well, no, you're not allowed to sell these seeds anymore through these various companies because we own the right to that production of that particular type of strain. I don't know that you're going to be able to take it out of the hands of the people at this point because they're so widely spread and can be reproduced. There was an article just the other day on Michigan Public Radio talking about a particular lilac that was stolen out of the British National Garden, and they were talking about plant theft and them having the ability to steal that plant and reproduce it and then sell it. And they were saying how difficult it would be for them to prosecute that person because there's no way for them to actually prove that plant that they're now selling is from the plant that was stolen out of this garden. So if that's the case in this particular scenario, you can imagine with the widespread amount of seeds, you can go to any website nowadays and find a plethora of different seed companies out there and breeders that are pushing different types of seeds available, that if a company were to step in like Monsanto and say, okay, 90% of the seed production out there is owned by us, copyrighted by us, and is no longer allowed to be sold or reproduced, I think they'd have a hard time reining that in at this point because of the thousands of producers that have been out there. And you also have the ability for current gardeners to produce their own if they should so choose. So I think that'd be a tough thing for them to rein in.
I think so too, because my observation from a sociological viewpoint is marijuana and the cultivation of it and stuff was basically what the radical fringe would done. Some people's estimation would be the radical fringe. So basically, they're now seeking out legitification through legislation, becoming legit in the eyes of the public. But there's still a bulk of people out there who are medical marijuana growers and marijuana growers who still have this kind of rebellious attitude and who are more on the outside of the fringe, maybe the fringe element. And so I don't think they would acquiesce as easy or be as easy to bring into control, say, as the farmers are with the seed production, from Monsanto.
Sure.
So, I mean, the heritage seeds and stuff like that, I think you'd have the heritage seeds basically in the marijuana community.
I think you would too, John. I think you're exactly right. And, if you look at other different types of produce out there, you can still go and buy heirloom seeds that have not been genetically altered, that aren't sold by, major corporations. And so if that's the case in other markets, I think it's only going to be, exasperated, like you're saying, because of the paranoia that exists, and albeit legitimate in a lot of cases, where the marijuana grower, whether they be a patient or a caregiver, has already been susceptible to having, their rights infringed on and so forth. So seeing them sort of, retaliate, I don't know if that's a right word, but, be untrusting of a company producing seeds like Monsanto, I think that would be sort of a given in this type of industry.
That's where I see that kind of. If you want to look at the Star Wars analogy, they're like the rebel resistance. I mean, I can see that that mindset's already there. And the thing is, I know some people in the medical marijuana community will be aligned themselves traditionally with what they consider the right, and then there's a lot of them would be considered on the left, but there's like some major common ground politically where they're now seeing an intrusion. Even the left, who would actually be welcoming a government intrusion, and now are resistant because they see it's just simply going too far. And so, I mean, I think that's by the like there's another Star Wars analogy is like Princess Leia said, the more you squeeze the the more it'll slip through your fingers. And I think that's what's going to happen with Monsanto, the government, medical marijuana community, all this stuff. They're going to try to put clamp down so much in everything, not even just the stuff that they consider vice crops like marijuana, but just food production. They're going to have basically they're telling people we're going to be the source of everything that you're going to grow. And you better in Monsanto and the government. Our government's more on board for helping them out in that end than any other governments in the world.
Sure, and I think like you're saying is they attempt to squeeze down, but with the proliferation of information like we have today, more and more people now are realizing that they don't want GMO type of products in their home or in their garden, and they're starting to become more aware, more intelligent on the products that it is that they're using, and I think you're seeing more and more people look to having their own resources, having their own genetics, if you will, for when it comes to plants. And I think that's going to continue to grow as we become more educated about the harmful effects of these other types of products that are out there. I think for the masses, that's really where they have their control on. So, for instance, if you're getting all of your produce from the grocery store, typically, then you're sort of bought into the processes there, and that may be the case in the future. There may be some types of 25 years down the road, maybe there's a Budweiser of marijuana out there on the market, and they have 3 or 4 strains that they offer, and these are the standards that the industry goes by. But I think you're also always going to have the connoisseur or the homegrown type of product out there available, and maybe even more so in the marijuana industry because of the way that the industry has become apparent here in the United States, especially where you have where now there seems to be a sort of explosion of microbreweries when it comes to beer. And a lot of different people out there are starting to get more into the homebrew scene. And we've seen this become more and more popular as people want to have their own handcrafted type of product. And this has been the case in wine for years. And I think wine even more so illustrates the industry there in comparison to marijuana because of the fact of the product itself, where it's coming from. Obviously you have a large variety of different grapes out there that can be grown, and the conditions that they're grown in will have an impact on the wine that's made, and also the processing of it itself and how it's being come to product or to market. And I think marijuana is very similar to that. Not only we have different types of strains being grown, but also the way that the strain is grown and the way that it's processed in the end after it's being harvested will also have an impact on that end product. I think you're going to see more standardized ways of gardening become apparent as people start to share more information. But all in all, I think you're still always going to have that homegrown, handcrafted type of product out there that people are going to want to move towards or gravitate towards because of the different things that are available. I mean, we have, even in the Compassion Club, we have different strains coming in there all the time that are new, that are something that someone has made at their own, or something that they brought in from another area that it's new and they wanting to try. I mean, we have seed lists from some of our different caregivers in there that are literally hundreds of different types of seeds that are available. And you take that and then combine it with the fact that it's going to be produced in different types of conditions based on that garden that they're putting it in. And those do have different effects on the end product. Just like if you were to grow grapes, in a hot, humid area versus a dry, arid area, that's going to have an impact on that wine product in the end. And cannabis is no different. So I think you're always going to have home growers, or at least small batches, microbrewers, if you will, of marijuana. Even if you do see large corporate interest involved in the future. Just because of the variety that's available to be produced. So
I have a friend who is very much against medical marijuana, and his argument is like, well, you don't know what that particular grower is using on his particular marijuana, on their marijuana,
and that can be a legitimate concern.
Right.
But as the industry becomes more educated and more mature, you're finding that more and more people now are relying on standardized testing. And trying to make sure that those types of concerns can be addressed, and that is a legitimate concern. What is this gardener using? Is some type of pesticide present? Is there a mold or some type of bacteria that could be there? Maybe some type of pest. And you're finding that more and more patients and caregivers are now asking for or demanding testing on their product. And this is becoming almost the industry standard, a sort of self-regulation that's now becoming available, and most products now have the ability to be tested.
They used to have the analytic groups come as applied analytics, or
we offer testing through the club right now through Iron Labs, which is a full-on testing unit, and they do screen for not just potency but also the pathogens that we were just talking about, different molds, pests, and so on, to ensure that people can be confident when they're getting their different types of cannabis from caregivers. Hey, this is not going to be sprayed down with like DDT or some type of horrible pesticide, that it's not going to be containing different molds or spores in there that are going to be harmful to someone's health. And then also it might have the right makeup of cannabinoids in there. Maybe if someone's looking for a particular type of strain, it's going to relieve a certain type of ailment, and they want to make sure that it's going to have enough or have a certain combination of cannabinoids in that strain, and that's why they're looking to have that tested.
Right. So another thing is too, I think that's the reason why your Compassion Club has got more members than maybe a lot of the other ones around, because I think that testing is kind of like a seal of approval kind of thing that people are looking for. And since you've actually so strongly advocated members to bring their product in to get it tested, that that might be a reason why you enjoy such a popularity.
I think that's part of it, and I think also having the members be the suppliers, where we have them coming in, providing their own material to themselves, I think is one of the big keys there, where we're not housing the inventory and we're not controlling the inventory. So we do have people in there that don't have their products tested, and when patients come in to meet with those caregivers, that's their choice. If they want to, if they feel safe and comfortable with that caregiver, that's their ability, and that's something that they have to make that decision on their own. But if they want something that's tested, then they can find that, and that's a nice benefit for them to do so.
See, Upton Sinclair wrote the book The Jungle because it was about basically it was aiming at the atrocities committed against individuals in the meatpacking community. And actually, the effect it had actually is the Food and Drug Administration was helped created largely because of that work. And he always quipped about, he said, "I aim for their hearts and I hit their stomachs." So, so there's something good came out of his book, but not what he intended. So a lot of people could say that people doing their own testing and stuff like that, if you do this consistently, and there's more of an outcry or actually encouragement within the community itself, then the government would feel less need to try to be the go-to group that you have to pass things through. And that's what I'm hoping for, that they'd have a maintenance of, really encouraging analysis done by the memberships of these different cooperatives or compassion clubs, so that way they could offset that need, the perceived need, to bring the government into the forefront.
Well, and that's one of the things that we've seen in this industry just in the 5 years now that we've had medical marijuana in Michigan, is that the consumer, the patient, is becoming more and more educated daily. I mean, especially as around the nation we have the cannabis movement constantly growing. We've seen more and more information come down the line, and we're finding that patients are now more and more educated about what types of medicinal products it is that they're looking for. We have had numerous requests recently for CBD strains or strains that are higher in CBDs than they are in THC. And that's because of the news and the information that's constantly being put out there, and patients are finding that, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And so that's one of the reasons why testing is becoming more popular, is because the patient is demanding it. And so the producers, the caregivers, and patients themselves are going through those extra lengths to provide that. They're looking for that information themselves because that's what's being demanded. So in a way, the market is regulating itself, and I think that is a good thing. I mean, I think it's natural that people are going to want to find information about what it is that they're ingesting or giving to their patients, and I think it's a natural thing that people are going to want to feel confident in their treatment methods. I mean, when you go to the doctor and you get certain types of prescriptions, I mean, oftentimes you may take the doctor's word for it that he's, going to give you something that, he feels comfortable with, and you're relying on that professional appearance there of the doctor's office to do that for you. But in the medical marijuana world, you don't have that, and people realize this, and so they're looking to get educated themselves, and I think that's a good thing. People can actually have an interest in what they're doing for themselves and take the time to find out what's going to be best for them. And this is a natural part of the market, and I think something that's going to continue to expand and move forward. I mean, more and more people are demanding now to have information on what it is that they're doing. And I think that's just a good thing. We shouldn't be blind about our own health. We should take it into our own hands. So with that being said, going back to our original part of what we were talking about is hemp milk. Try some out. It's good for you. It's just as a clarifier, when you ingest hemp milk, you're not going to get high. This isn't something that has THC in it. It's not a medical marijuana thing. It's something that you can buy at the grocery store, but it is good for you. It's like I said, it's full of nutrients, proteins, other types of things out there. This is probably not something you're going to find that's homemade. We don't have industrial hemp produced in this country, so you're not going to find it down at your local collective or anything. But it is available, it is out there, and it can be tasty. Just remember the maple syrup.
There was a place out in the Metamora area that sold all kinds of hemp products.
Yeah.
Yeah, and forget the name of the place. A cousin of Mary Jane or something like that it's called. Or
Okay.
Mary Jane's cousin. I ran into the proprietor of that when I was on at the art fair a couple years ago down in Ann Arbor. And I tried to get her on for things that didn't work out. We kept on missing each other or something like that. So, but it never materialized. I don't know if it's still in operation, but they sold the roasted seeds by bulk. You can get small amounts.
A lot of the health food stores now have the roasted seeds available. You can get them in different flavors. They're a pretty tasty little stack. They can taste kind of nutty, if you will. Obviously, they're crunchy, so they got a little bit of a texture to them.
Well, Chris Rosenkrantz, the guy who helps me here at the studio, he brought in some like basically granola bars that he bought from Big Lots, and it had hemp seed in there.
Yep.
And so it's pretty commonplace, and now it's getting more common.
It really is, and I think you're going to see that continue to grow as people become more educated. People get a little less scared about it. A lot of people can, get that confused with marijuana and think, "Oh, is this going to get me high or something like that?"
There was a guy who grew the acreage of it out there in Colorado.
Yeah.
How did that go? I mean, did he harvest it?
He harvested it, pulled it off, and it actually seemed to be a successful venture for him. I haven't heard any updates since we covered the story last, which I think was here in the fall.
Yeah.
But I know that they're moving forward with their legislation out there in Colorado for industrial hemp growing. And actually, something else I was going to cover this week is New Jersey. Their state Senate just gave approval to an industrial hemp bill there. So you might see it be growing in other parts of the country as well.
No pun intended.
Yes. And their assembly still has to vote on that yet, so the state house still has to get together and so forth. But, it looks like a bill is moving forward in New Jersey as well. So
if they can grow it in Canada, which bulk of our product is coming from there, then we certainly can grow that here in Michigan, man.
And that's one thing a lot of people don't realize is the United States is one of the few industrialized countries out there that does not produce industrial hemp. It's kind of a misnomer, the fact that we ship in millions of dollars of products worth of hemp products in this country, but yet we don't produce any of it here. So it's kind of an oddball thing. And looks like it might be one of those things that's going to be changing. Like I said, Colorado passed their measure here this last year, looks to implement it in this year, 2014, and maybe we'll see something happen in New Jersey as well. And I know there's a couple other states as well. I think New Hampshire and Massachusetts was looking at similar bills in their legislature.
Well, it's ridiculous because if you look at it, and it's like I've looked at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to farm subsidies in this country. Well, basically the upshot is we pay people not to produce. We have men like Sam Donaldson, that TV news guy, who actually owns a farm just so he can get the supplement of not producing off that farm. Okay, and that's millions of dollars a year, billions of dollars. So we're always looking for something we can export to bring money back into this country from somewhere else. We have the comparative advantage. We are better technologically, and we have the more arable soil than any other country on the planet. But that's where we could actually kick ass economically through our agricultural products. I mean, right there on the old McDonald Dairy thing, it says the agriculture is still the strong, enduring base which the entire economy of the United States rests. Of course, it'd be more effective if that building was still in operation, but nonetheless, it's still a valid point.
Sure.
I mean, we could kick. I mean, if we allowed our farmers to actually produce stuff so they could ship it abroad and actually bring money back here, you wouldn't have family farms failing. Sure. You wouldn't have corporations taking over. You would actually have better seed. You wouldn't have people like Monsanto seizing the upper hand because you could have more people producing stuff with heritage seeds. I mean, on all these kind of movements like the urban farming, which is good, but it's limited. It's too limited in scope. You need those large.
Based.
Sure. And it's too limited in scope because let's face it, we have 300 million people plus in the United States. Having little farm spots is nice in the inner city, but to actually do away with the corporations and having them have control of our food source, more things got to be produced almost on the same size scale as those corporations are able to do.
Sure.
So I'm not knocking them. I'm on board for that, and I want to see that happen here. I want to see fish produced. I want to see grains grown and tomatoes grown and all that. I have no problem with that. That's a smart move.
Right.
Because it's not a matter of question of when the food supply is going to break down. It's a matter of when it's going to, not where, but if. But it's when it's going to happen.
And it is scary when you stop and look at all the different food products that are at your local grocer. With the large percentage of those being shipped from other areas of the country, other parts of the world, and you stop and realize, okay, if shipping were to just for some odd reason, let's just say stop tomorrow, how many products do you enjoy on a daily basis that you would no longer have access to? And the list is quite long. We've grown accustomed to eating things like bananas, pomegranates, pineapple, things that are clearly not going to grow in a Michigan climate. You're talking about small urban development. We need to really take a look at that. And I agree, exporting is good, but also if we could have a little bit more self-sustaining type of culture, I think that would be as good as well.
I think so too. I've seen with Michigan, especially now, Flint, Detroit has lost so much of their population. It's ground just laying there open. That soil is still productive, even if they're worried about contamination because of this air pollution dropping down, the particles and particulates and all that
Sure.
coming down the ground. Okay, you grow mushrooms from 1 or 2 crops. You can actually eat those mushrooms. They're not affected by heavy metal contamination. I'd just say let them grow and then destroy the first 2 crops. The rest of them, consume them.
Sure.
Mushrooms that have a lot of trace elements that we're not aware of at one time, they're actually nutritionally great for people.
Yeah.
So I get excited about that. So, but it just because I see that there's so much here we could do in the local area with those empty ground we have.
I agree. I
Yeah.
think it should be utilized. Well, maybe we could have industrial hemp. I know that there was a couple different bills that they were working on here in the Michigan legislature last year. Maybe we could get them revived or get them actually moving forward. There really is no reason why we shouldn't be producing industrial hemp. It's not just a food product. It can be used in all kinds of things.
Okay, it would keep money here.
And so forth.
It'd keep money here, even if we export it or take it off of the state. If we just use it here, it'd make more of our other corporations economically, say, on par with the other ones. Because let's face it, the costs are saved here from bringing it in is gone. It's right here eternally.
And I know that there's a lot of other industries that could be potentially impacted by industrial hemp farming, but all in all, as we continue to grow and evolve as a society, we can always move monetary funds from one area to another and see, as long as we're seeing growth and a positive impact on the world and the community, I think that's really what we have to look out for, not necessarily trying to sustain older ways or dead ways of doing things that continue to stick us down in our past. That's definitely something to consider. All right, I got a few other things I wanted to share with you as far as medical marijuana. There was a BC Compassion Center. This is in Battle Creek Compassion Center. It was raided earlier this week. I believe it was yesterday. And cops aren't saying a whole lot right now. Michigan State Police was on the scene. They were accused of selling illegally. I don't know if that's illegally to patients or illegally to people that are not patients. But it looks like it was a part of an ongoing investigation of the past couple months. And that raid has been conducted. We have yet to get any further details on this, but as more information comes out, we'll keep you posted. Other information going around the world, we've got some news on Florida. Looks like they're getting close to getting their medical marijuana bill on the ballot. Nothing's happened yet. They have until February 1st to continue collecting all of their signatures that they need. They've currently turned in over 300,000 signatures that have already been counted and I guess included, but they have yet to get the other 300,000 that they need. Looks like they have those signatures, but they're waiting to turn those in. They want to try to make sure that the signatures are valid and they're going to be counted. They know that quite a few of those won't be as it goes in the typical signature collection process. Also, they have to yet to clear the state Supreme Court. They have to make sure that the ballot measure is properly worded, that it's clear, and that it can be, in fact, placed on the state ballot. So it looks like they're getting close. I know it's been a well-funded effort down there in Florida. A certain group of attorneys got together and put over $2 million into this ballot collection effort, and we'll have yet to see if that's going to happen, but we'll know shortly here. As I said, the deadline's February 1st for them to get their signatures in, and hopefully that'll go well for the residents down there in Florida who are looking to obtain access to medical marijuana. Another state that passed their law here recently just went into effect. That's Illinois, our neighbors to the south. January 1st, their program went online. It'll be a while before residents down there in Illinois have access to medical marijuana, but legally it is available, or technically legal, as of the 1st. Looks like the state has yet to license, but they're going to license up to 60 different dispensaries. These would be state licensed dispensaries. And they are arguing right now on how that should be distributed. Looks like the pharmacists down there want to take a shot at it. They're currently being prohibited from doing so because on a federal level, of course, medical marijuana does not exist. Marijuana is still being illegal, a Schedule I drug, and pharmacists cannot prescribe or distribute, obviously, anything that's federally illegal, but they nevertheless want to take a shot at it. There was testimony given at a Senate hearing by a different pharmacist that feel that they should have an adequate, or feel that they have an adequate ability to distribute the drug. We'll have yet to see how it will be distributed. The program is ramping up here. They're due to have their rules out by April 1st, and they say it might be up till the end of the year before patients have actual access to medical marijuana in the state. So as of now, it's January 1st. Of course, it was passed back in December. It goes into effect here this 1st of January, and it'll be a while before the program gets rolling. For those of you that remember, back here in Michigan, we had a similar situation going on. We had the bill passed in December, went into effect January 1st, and the rules were not out until April 20th when people could actually start filing applications and so forth. Looks like they're going through the same type of process down there in Illinois. And hopefully residents down there will get access and get the relief that it is that they're looking for. All right, got other news. This is from Washington, D.C. They do have medical marijuana in Washington, D.C. If you're not aware, the District of Columbia has had this in place. And now they're looking to take things a step further. They're looking to possibly pass a decriminalization bill. This is very similar to the one that we have here in Flint or Detroit, other cities around Michigan. It is for people that are caught with less than 1 ounce or less, and it would reduce penalties from currently, which they are as a misdemeanor, could have up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. It would reduce those penalties down to the equivalent of like a parking ticket, a $25 fine, civil infraction type of thing. And this is something that's getting through the D.C. Council currently. It has not passed yet, but there's something that they are considering. This is a decrim bill, like I said, and so I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a better use of the resources in the area. Obviously, D.C. has long been reported a high crime area. This will allow the officers in the area to focus on more heinous crimes, if you will, put the resources where things really matter. And I think it'd be good for the residents of the city there. If you think about it, somebody getting caught with, let's say, a half ounce of cannabis, they could potentially be losing their job by spending that amount of time in jail, putting their family in jeopardy by having the excessive fines. I think from an all-around social impact, this is a good thing when we look at these different types of decriminalization policies. Whether or not you're for marijuana, I think you have to look at the social impact on the penalties themselves, and I don't see how you could want to have that type of impact. I don't see how that could be resolved as a positive thing.
Well, Jimmy Carter said, we've played that clip before when we first started doing a show here about making the punishment fit the crime. And I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't see how somebody smoking a joint or a bowl was deserves going to prison for decades and having everything stripped from them. Because basically, to me, the issue at stake is actually the government saying we want to control what goes in your body. Well, the only kind of relationship where somebody would have that much control of you is the master-slave one, and you're becoming slaves.
You're right, John. Like this is sort of like a benign substance for one, but it's like a victimless crime. And so, why would you want to go take somebody that is potentially a active member in their society, a taxpayer, a job worker, maybe a family member? Take them out of that role, put them in one where we are now paying for them as citizens, as taxpayers, to go through the incarceration system. I don't see how that's a positive impact any way, shape, or form. So to me, decriminalization makes sense. Other than other types of policies we could look at, like legalization and so forth. It doesn't give the people the ability to buy, sell, or produce marijuana. It's just simply a look at the possession itself, what do we do when someone's caught with that, and how do we deal with it? And I think that this makes more sense. This allows that person to continue to contribute to society. Government's still able to collect a fine from it. It doesn't necessarily make it legal by any means, so there's not a big change there in that aspect. But it definitely allows that person to continue with their life. And I think that's the main thing that we have to look at. Like I said, it's a victimless crime, if you will. And so why should we take that person and now make them dependent on society is going through jail?
I have friends who got pot for weed years ago, and because they served time for that, they had a couple of ounces on them maybe.
Sure.
Now they can't get jobs. Their whole life is down. Of course, then again, my thing is like, well, you knew it was illegal. You shouldn't have done this. But the question's got to be asked: is it really worth the effort to clamp down? I mean, the law's got to have a purpose. Well, I can understand if something's horrific. Now we won't want people walking around there with lasers killing people. Okay, well, try to keep that out of the hands of people. But I mean, why have such great impetus to try to stop people from smoking a plant that basically, yes, they can get high, they can get a funny feeling off it, whatever. But is it so devastating to society overall that it warrants this draconian measure? I mean, these draconian measures.
John. I think we have to take a look at these types of policies on a broader standpoint and looking at the whole drug war. I mean, when we take a look at the policies in place for someone, we're not talking about the market where people are buying and selling or producing. We're talking about personal use, whether it be something like marijuana or other types of drugs out there. When we get a hold of that person, law enforcement, arrest them. What is the best policy for dealing with that person as a society? How do we move forward? And I think that we should take a look at those types of practices on a broad scale. I mean, taking them out of society, putting them into incarcerative types of things. Now we're paying for them as taxpayers. Is this something that we want to continue on with, or is there a better way of dealing with this? When someone's on an addictive substance, one that's going to ruin their life, even like say for instance we bust that personal heroin user. Are we better off throwing them in jail for years on end and fining them, or would we be better off taking them, putting them into some type of a health program, getting them off the drug and back into being a productive member of society? What's going to be the better role for not just them, but for us as a people? And I think, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. I think that if we can get them off of that drug and getting them back to being a productive member, a taxpayer, a job worker, if we take them and put them in jail for, let's say, a year, give them a felony, which makes it really tough to get a new job after they get back out of jail, obviously this is a damning sort of a thing for the rest of their life potentially. And did we get them the drug help that we need? Are they going to become dependent again on that substance once they get out of jail? That's something we have to take a look at as a society, as taxpayers. And I think that we should revamp these policies. I mean, I think that they need counseling. They need to get off these drugs. They need help with that. And then we need to get them back into being a productive member of society.
Well, see, I don't know if you've probably read the book, or maybe you've heard the reference, Confessions of an Opium Eater by a guy named Thomas de Quincey.
I have not read that, no.
He was an English opium addict back in the late 1700s, early 1800s. And that was before there was a lot of laws against it, but there's still a stigma to it, so basically it was kept underground because of that. But this man kicked the habit, but basically he still lived a long and productive life, even, and that back then a lot of people don't live a long life. Right. Of course, he was upper crust. I mean, he was, probably upper echelon, But the point is, a lot of times, the reason why people hit such the skids and they do die of drug addiction and stuff, because they're buying it from the street, the black market source. We have very unscrupulous people selling it, adulterating with God knows what. Also, they're trying to reuse needles, cause ulcerations, and that's what causes the death of the person, not the drug itself.
Yeah. You're right. A lot of ancillary types of things that go along with the black market type of scheme can have a greater impact than the drug itself. I mean, certainly a drug like heroin or opium like that is going to have a damaging effect on the person just from its own use. But the other things that go along with that could also be even worse in times.
I mean, I was all for that. Let's prosecute. When then you look at the fact that because it's illegal and you keep this great pressure on people to keep their own uses of this stuff private, and it just festers. And then they do use a bad needle, or they do get a bad drug that kills them outright because it's adulterated with rat poison or whatever, And who knows?
You're right. And the alternative for that person is, do I go to jail, get a felony, pay fines that they can't afford and so on. That's why I think decriminalization for other types of drugs is a better way to go, because it allows them to get the counseling they need, still contribute to society, and that's really going to be the best effect for that person overall, I think. I do have another type of article that I wanted to share with you. It's kind of off topic from that, but I thought this was a good one. This is a research that was done, a study that was done from people in Canada, U.S., Germany, and the Netherlands. They surveyed 953 patients from 31 different countries on their experiences on different forms of medical cannabis. This was published in the Journal of Psychoactive Drugs, and the results showed that the patients were more satisfied overall with natural cannabis in comparison with pharmaceutical derivatives. And I think that's an interesting study there, something we need to take a hold of. It says here, this is in quotes, and I'm reading to you from leafscience.org. The quote is, "In general, herbal non-pharmaceutical CBMs, which is cannabinoid-based medicines, received a higher appreciation scores by participants than pharmaceutical products containing cannabinoids." The study, obviously could be bad news for pharmaceutical companies out there, but I think this is a testament to the plant itself. We just talked about having the different varieties out there, the different types of compounds that can be present in cannabis, from the different strains that are available. And I think that is a testament, this study here is a testament to that. And, people have a lot greater choice, a lot greater variety available to them when they're dealing with the whole plant matter versus getting the synthesized or a derivative of cannabis in a pharmaceutical fashion. A lot of people would point to this type of product and say, well, with the pharmaceutical, you've got a specific dosage, you've got a controlled method of delivery, and you also have a controlled production, so we can ensure safety and so forth. And not to say that those things aren't good, but if we're sacrificing the benefits of the whole plant, such as all the other different types of cannabinoids that are found inside of the plant, not just THC or CBD, and we're also sacrificing the different variables in there, such as having the different amounts of potency available and the different delivery methods, which can be impactful in a person's ingestion method. I think that we have to take a look at the whole plant itself and consider the benefits of that in versus to just having the different types of derivatives out there. Moving on from the article, it says, besides the need for such products to be standardized and quality controlled, the data suggests that overall there's good satisfaction with whole plant preparations that are affordable and administered in an inhaled manner or in the form of a tincture. Basically, like we're saying, a lot of different types of patients and caregivers out there that are producing their own cannabis for patients are taking the time to get testing done. And so it's not necessarily that if you get product from a person who's growing it versus getting it from a pharmaceutical source, that it's not going to have some type of controlled method going on there, that it's not going to have some sort of testing that's been done on it. That stuff is being performed in the homegrown world, if you will. The only type of products out there right now that are readily available are Marinol and Sativex, and these products do have certain benefits that go along with them, but are they comparable to the whole plant? And I think that you're finding, like the survey suggests here, no, most patients are going to have a better experience, a more complete experience by using the whole plant versus using this synthesized form here that we're finding that is available through other types of pharmaceuticals. And as you know, here in the United States, these pharmaceuticals aren't even readily available yet. They probably will be in the near future, but Marinol is obviously, but Sativex and Epidiolex are not yet, as they will be, I think, in the coming future. But even when they are, I think you're going to find a lot of patients are still going to be relying on having the whole plant method for their ingestion purposes. And the reason is because it contains variables that you're not going to find in a pharmaceutical product. And it can be tested, so people will be able to find out what it is they're looking for. That's about it for information that I have for you to share for you for this week. I hope you guys are staying healthy out there, taking care of yourselves. Try some of that hemp milk if you will. It's good stuff. It's nice and healthy. And keep your gardens safe, healthy, and take care of them for me, all right? You guys have a great week. I look forward to seeing you back here on the Genesee County Compassion Club show next Wednesday from flinttalkradio.com. Thanks for joining me. And John, thanks for your commentary this week. As always, it is appreciated. Guys, stay safe and have a good one.